there is a danger that Rishi Sunak, by going to these lengths to try and keep his own backbenchers happy by promising tax cuts, actually undermines the Tories' reputation for financial prudence and credibility.
Let's look at what the Conservatives are promising today with Times Radio's Theo Usherwood. Theo, good morning.
Very good morning to you, Rosie.
So at the heart of this manifesto, really, it seems to be lowering taxes and help for home buyers.
Yes, let's just go through this. It's a £13 billion package in the short term, a cut to national insurance by another 2p. And of course, this is important from Rishi Sunak's point of view, and he'll lay this out later, supporting people who are out there working and contributing to the economy. And that's why he's decided to go down this route of cutting national insurance. And this is something, of course, that goes right across the board. It affects all workers who who pay national insurance contributions. And there have been those on the right of the party who'd like to see more traditional policies, such as abolishing inheritance tax. But actually, Rishi Sunak knows that in order to try and galvanise as much support as possible, he needs to go for a tax or a tax cut that goes right across the economy. And that's why he's gone again to try and cut national insurance. And then there's going to be a £1 billion scheme to help first-time buyers. Now, as you heard there in his interview with Nick Robinson, Rishi Sunak highlighting the fact that the deposit was the problem for many young people trying to get onto the housing ladder, that actually, if they could get a deposit or they had enough money for a deposit and they could get a mortgage, the mortgage payments themselves weren't a problem. Of course, that's because many young people are paying sky-high rents. So that's not the issue. The issue, as Mr. Sunak outlined there, is the deposit. And that's why he's going to be talking about this £1 billion package, which is going to basically underwrite mortgages for first-time buyers with banks and lenders so that they can afford they can take out a mortgage of 95%, leaving them only to save 5% in an actual deposit, which for many many first-time buyers, that's the real obstacle. Once they can get on the housing ladder and start paying down that mortgage in capital terms, then actually it's not too difficult. But it's if you have a 5% 5% mortgage on £100,000 home, that's £5,000, £200,000, that's £10,000. That, as Mr. Sunak will outline today, that's manageable. But of course, if lenders are only going in with 75% mortgages, you're looking at multiples of that to save up, and that's for many young people is just not feasible, and that's why he's going for it.
Yeah, it's sort of an extension, really, modelled on the Help to Buy scheme. The criticism of that often is that for everybody else, it potentially makes houses more expensive. And what the Conservatives aren't pledging today in their manifesto is house building targets. Instead, it's sort of providing financial support to first-time buyers rather than increasing the supply of houses available.
Yes, and of course, you heard Mr. Sunak saying there that he wanted to build more houses as long as it was done sensitively in line with what local communities want, and that's one of the great paradoxes within this Conservative government, is that because the opposition from Conservative MPs on the backbenches, successive prime ministers haven't been able to implement house building targets. They tried to do it. Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson tried to do a sort of algorithm that would set out exactly what areas had to take a specified number of houses and to do it fairly, and they were pushed back on it. There was a revolt on the Conservative benches. They simply weren't prepared to take it, and that's been a long-running saga within the Conservative Party, that young people and need, not just young people, but we need more homes built in this country. But of course, every time there's a development, local MPs, many of them, of course, in conservative areas, get very, very het up and angry because their constituents are het up and angry,
it's
and
that
try
tension,
and block
isn't
those
it?
homes being built.
Yeah, of being in government, but also being a local MP, and therefore you get pulled in both directions. I think this, Stephen Swindon put it as the kitchen sink manifesto. The Tories kind of throwing absolutely everything at this. How difficult, though, Theo, and you've scrutinised many a manifesto before, is it for the Conservatives to get away from the fact that a lot of the problems they're promising to solve have been problems while they've been in power? Some of them have got worse.
Yes, so there are two issues, of course, and this is something that Labour will be highlighting. Firstly, we've had 14 years of Conservative-led government. Of course, the first 5 years was in a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. So that's the first thing and Labour have made great hay of that, not just in this election campaign, but previously as well. The other problem around throwing the kitchen sink at something is that when you start to get into the numbers, it doesn't always add up specifically. You are trying to, the Conservatives are trying to bank on money that isn't necessarily there. They've outlined the first £6 billion of that package they're going to find, and Labour have done the same thing, I should say, in terms of clamping down on tax avoidance and tax evasion. Much of the money, the rest of the money, is going to come from when they start looking at clamping down on welfare benefits and the number of the amount of benefits that are provided to people, specifically on things like disability, living allowance, people who are out of work. So we're going to have, rather than doctors, this is previously announced, by the way, I should say, rather than doctors necessarily writing a fit to work note, i.e. that somebody can't work because they're not well enough, you're going to have specified practitioners who are going to be brought in to do that. And the idea is that they will take a less sympathetic view to whether somebody is able to work or not. And then, of course, there's going to be a clampdown on those who are out of work for 12 months or more. If they've been offered a job, then they're going, and they haven't accepted that job, then they're going to lose their benefits. Now, can they raise in excess of £6 or £7 billion from doing that? Remains to be seen. And I think it's going to be the Labour manifesto is going to be slightly in contrast to this, because I don't think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, when they announced the manifesto on Thursday, are going to be promising such significant tax cuts. And certainly they haven't even ruled out in the last couple of days rises, and you're going to be looking at this later in your programme around capital gains tax and corporation tax. So there is a danger that Rishi Sunak, by going to these lengths to try and keep his own backbenchers happy by promising tax cuts, actually undermines the Tories' reputation for financial prudence and credibility.
Final thing, Theo. Yesterday, we saw the Liberal Democrats launch their manifesto in a characteristic style of their campaign so far. It was very much laden with fun in how they delivered it, but the serious message at the heart of it is really sort of around healthcare, the care sector, the NHS. What is it that Ed Davey's saying, I'm going to do if I'm in power?
So it's eight and a bit billion pounds, I should say, of money for the NHS, and specifically social care. Ed Davey has spoken at great lengths about his own struggles as a carer, personally for his mum when she had cancer when he was younger, and more latterly for his son, who has very significant needs. Ed Davey announcing that he wanted to make personal care free for those who need it, for the disabled, and also announcing that he wanted more GP appointments so that everybody could see a GP within 7 days. Ambitious plans, costly plans, but he's hoping that it will get some attention, and people will, as the squeeze becomes tighter, closer to the election, where we all come to the realisation that only one man can be Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. Ed Davey is hoping that this manifesto will persuade voters to actually, specifically in southern constituencies and in the west of England, to give the Lib Dems a chance, as he put it, vote for somebody who will be their local champion in Parliament. That idea that the Lib Dems could somehow act in coalition with Labour, even Ed Davey is now admitting is not going to happen. The advantage from looking at the polls for Keir Starmer is so significant that it really it's beginning to seem inevitable that he'll be able to lead a government without the need for any support from smaller parties like the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah. Theo, thank you. Theo Usherwood from Times Radio, taking us through what we can expect a little bit later from the Conservatives' manifesto. And I've asked if you feel sorry for Rishi Sunak. Has it got to that stage of the campaign where it could be that sympathy helps the Conservatives? James says, no, they've ruined the country in so many ways. They are habitual liars. Furthermore, Sunak is a D-Day deserter, which does not merit sympathy. Saul has a similar piece of analysis saying the D-Day debacle was the final nail in the PM and the Tories' coffin. Leaving in the first place was appalling judgment, but having done it, he should have said he went there to meet the veterans, which he did, not the photo op in the afternoon with the leaders. He's meeting at the G7. Sympathy never wins votes. In this case, it will drive any undecided voters towards a party that isn't quite so desperate. Let me know what you think. The campaign seems to be struggling along. I wonder if the manifesto today and the tax cut promises, will shift it.